Welcome to the Tudor Dixon Podcast. Today we have one of our Newsmax hosts with me, Sharla McBride. She is from Wake Up America, and she's with us every morning from 6:30 to 9, so you have to tune in to the show. But also one of my favorite people to hang out with when I am over in New York City, and I saw you in D.C., and it was really fun.
It was so much fun seeing you at the big Newsmax gala, the big ball. You looked fabulous as always.
I know. I think if people weren't there, they can't understand exactly how exciting it was. And I say that because I was talking to people as we're like going from event to event, and you go to these events and you see so many of the people that you see on TV and that you have seen campaigning, and everybody's just there and everyone was so happy. But as I was walking to one of the viewing parties, I saw this guy on the street running down the sidewalk with a huge Trump flag. And I thought, you know what? This is different. The feeling is different. The unity is different. Even the Democrats. I mean, obviously the radical Dems are never going to be okay, but it was a different feeling in DC than I've felt for a long time.
Because it was a happy day.
Yes.
You're right. Everywhere I went, people just seemed to be in good moods. And I think the overall feeling was hope, right? I felt that people were hopeful that, what they've lived through and experienced the last 4 years, that change is coming. And wow, what a first week, right? We've seen so much change that this president has implemented in really just the first 8 days of his presidency.
Right. Well, and actually I want to get to that because this week, or maybe it was the end of last week, I can't even remember. Maybe was it Monday that the Selena Gomez story came out?
Yes. Yeah.
So for those people who didn't see this, Selena Gomez watched Trump made the announcement that he was sending folks back to Colombia. The Colombian leadership said, no, we're not going to take them. He said, I'm going to put on these tariffs if you don't. Ultimately, it turned out that Colombia was like, yeah, you know what? Actually, we'll take those guys back. So they were criminal, illegal aliens. But this triggered Selena Gomez in a way where she decided to go on social media, and she has over 400 million followers. And she cried on social media about how sad she was that these people were being sent back. And she referred to them as her people because she is also of Hispanic descent. And she got a lot of blowback for this because people said, wait a minute, these are bad guys. But I wanted to dig into this a little bit more. And I know you said you talked to Tom Homan today, and he came out and talked to her he responded to this. So I wanted to dig into the immigration stuff a little bit more. What did Tom have to say?
He had a lot of great things to say, and wow, what a pleasure to talk with him. He's getting out there and he's doing what the American people voted for, right, on November 5th. And, in response to her crying video, he said, I didn't see any tears for Laken Riley. I didn't see any tears for Rachel Morin, right? I didn't see any tears for the 300,000 children that are missing because they've been trafficked into this country. And I asked him, I said, if you watch other mainstream media outlets, some very liberal, you'll hear stories that you guys are going into schools and you're going into libraries and you're going into churches and you're taking children. You're essentially kidnapping children. I said, can you tell me, is that what's happening? And he said, absolutely not. We have never gone into an elementary school or a church or a library, making children in this country safer. Because just yesterday, he was able to arrest 9 known child rapists. Kind of people, he said, the people that he's encountered on the streets with those ICE agents, he said, those are the worst kind of people. No country wants them, to be honest, because they're human beings. He's come face to face with known murderers, rapists, violent criminals that are committing armed robberies in our communities, and we look at the Laken Riley Act, which is being signed this week. It is on the president's desk. And what a monumental thing to be his first act, right? The first bill that he signs. And what's so interesting, Tudor, is Senator John Fetterman, who's a Democrat, will be there in the room. Because he said this shouldn't be a partisan issue. This young woman was attending one of our great universities, University of Georgia. I'm a proud alum. So that's why I say it's a great university. But she was doing something that every woman in America should be able to do, right? She was jogging. That's exactly what Rachel Morin was doing, a mother of 5 in Maryland, when she was also murdered by an illegal migrant who should not have been here. And these are the people that now ICE agents are able to round up, and they know where they are. We've seen what they've done, right? Thousands in 1 week. He said, we're going in, we've been keeping eyes on them, but because of the previous laws, we were unable to get these guys. So, you have one of the leaders of Tren de Aragua from Venezuela, who was arrested in New York City this week. They knew he was there. They just couldn't get him. And now they're able to do that. And people are out in the streets. Obviously, I work in New York City. People are feeling that sigh of relief. Like, thank goodness I can walk to my local grocery store and hopefully not be a victim of an armed robbery now, because they're starting to round up the known bad guys in that neighborhood.
Right. I think as we hear some of these stories, it's totally shocking to think that anybody would have voted against the Laken Riley Act. And as a mom of 4 girls, that's exactly what I thought. What you said there was perfect. We expect our daughters to be able to go to a university and walk on their campus or go out for a jog and not be in danger. We expect our friends, we expect our fellow moms. I mean, you think about Rachel Morin and the father of her children going, now I'm raising these kids all by myself. I mean, I know an adult friend who just lost the father of her children. And she was like, my kids are adults. I'm an adult. There's still this heavy weight of being the only person. Where is the mourning for these families that are broken, that have had someone taken from them, and that their lives are changed forever? Little kids, parents. I mean, it's incomprehensible that anybody would say, yeah, somebody who comes in here illegally and decides to then continue to act illegally and commit crimes should be able to stay. And that's the problem with these sanctuary cities. And that's why Congress is calling some of these mayors to come and testify, because they're saying, well, wait a minute. Chicago insists on continuing to be a sanctuary city. San Francisco, you got that mayor in Boston that is just a total nut job.
Yeah.
Who's absolutely like, if you come here and you've committed a crime, we will never turn you in. What the heck?
And
Why?
Tom Homan, he addressed that today. I asked him point blank. I said, if you encounter one of these mayors of these blue sanctuary cities that are standing in the way and prohibiting you and your ICE agents from doing their job, will you arrest them? And he said, yes, absolutely, because then they're breaking the law of this land if they hinder our operations. And he said, right now, what he's saying is they're all talk. It's very interesting how we saw the governor of Massachusetts, Maura Healey, kind of change course. Back in November, she was interviewed by CNN and she said she would absolutely not help them at all in these deportation efforts. She would do everything she could to stop it, to keep it from happening in her state. And then just a few days ago, she was caught on camera again. And she said, well, it needed to happen. I'm glad they're rounding up criminals. Oh, okay. So now you're happy that they're cleaning up your streets. But in November, you weren't so sure about this. And that's what Tom Homan said. He said, honestly, it's a lot of talk from these people, because once they get there and they see the types of people they're arresting, again, he said, we're not taking these families into custody. That's false information. We're not going and taking children from their parents. False information. He said all of the people that he is taking, his words are bad dudes.
But let's be clear. This is not illegal. This is not unusual. This is not shocking. And because of that, actually, it was the Selena Gomez video that made me say to myself, I want to see what Obama did. I want to see what Biden did, because suddenly the media frenzy over any deportations is totally out of control. However, we all know that Obama was dubbed deporter in chief, that people thought that he was out of control with his deportations. So I wanted to just kind of research this and dig. And I was doing an op-ed for the Washington Examiner. So I'm pulling out the numbers and I'm like, wait a minute. Trump in his first term deported 1.2 million illegals. But Obama, his first term was almost 1.5. His second term was over 1.5. So this is, again, not unusual. This is all propaganda. This is all media propaganda, which to me is so criminal, that you are manipulating the American people to think that their government is doing something that is unusual and has never been done before, but actually has always been done before. But the real kicker is Joe Biden, who left the door open. Let's remember, he didn't try to secure the border. And that was the difference between Obama and Biden. Obama came out and said, hey, my promise to you was to fix immigration. and I have secured the border with extra agents and technology. And the speech is there, 2014. Go look at it. If you listen to that 2014 speech from President Obama, you would think it was Trump. And he put those guys out there. He made sure he was deporting people. But you go to Joe Biden, what a strange turn of events, who comes from the Obama administration. He leaves the door open, no border security whatsoever, actually starts to use the agents to welcome people in, but he deported nearly 5 million people in his first term. So it's just like, I mean, it's like scooping up sand through a bucket with holes. You're pushing it, you're getting some sand out, and you still have all the rest is just pouring into the country. It just blows my mind that nobody in the media was saying, actually, Joe Biden is desperately trying to get rid of these people. He's lying to you. Because to me, it was a manipulation. Lying to you about the border. Oh, we don't need a secure border. And then trying as quickly as he can to spend money to get him out of here.
You know, it's so ridiculous. And when I look at that Selena Gomez video, one of the things that infuriates me most is she's saying, my people. And yet she was raised here by an American mother. Yes, her father is of Mexican descent, but I'm told that he abandoned her when she was younger. So she was raised here. She was able to create a great life for herself, originally through the Disney Channel, right? She lives in a multi-million-dollar home. She has been enjoying all of the riches of Los Angeles and of living in this great country we call America. And yet she is the first to criticize, how dare we as Americans do this? And then again, you said it's propaganda, it's false information. You know, they're watching the wrong media outlets that are just simply lying. And they've been lying to the American people for the last 4 years. She's saying they're taking the children. Again,
well, and I will actually, I will say that the amount of times that conservative media tried to say there are so many kids, these kids they're missing, but they weren't actually missing because we've located a lot of them already. They knew where these kids were. They're bringing these kids in. They're trafficking these kids. They're selling these kids into labor, child labor. And if you think child labor doesn't happen in the United States, then you got another thing coming, because it certainly does. And it is the highest business for the cartels, the most lucrative business for the cartels now is human trafficking, not even drugs anymore. It's human trafficking. These cartels are truly terrorist organizations. They don't care about lives. They bring people across. They bring babies across. They abuse them. They murder them. They leave their bodies out in the desert. They don't care. And that is the shame, that the mainstream media would say it for Obama. So it's just their hatred of Trump. I mean, really, if you break this down, it is just their hatred of Trump that would be enough of a motivator to put people in danger, because they've spun this narrative that's so unusual to protect our borders, to consider ourselves a sovereign nation. They've made that into such a demonic thing that people are manipulated. And you've got a star like Selena Gomez, who really did make it. I mean, she does have the American dream. And yet, even with the American dream, this is very manipulating. She's young. She has a huge following, and she has bought into the BS that comes out of the mainstream media.
That's exactly what it is. It's complete BS. But then we have to look at, you know, the way people voted, right? On November 5th. Are they not seeing this? That overwhelming. Right. Donald Trump also won the popular vote. Millions of people saw the truth finally, but you still have those people who are walking around with their eyes closed and their ears open to one side. You know, sometimes I watch clips from the ladies of The View. I can't sit through an entire episode, but it just baffles me how they see just so narrowly one path. And in
also rich people.
But yes. And in their eyes, Donald Trump, you know, is absolute pure evil. And it's like, no, but look at what he's done in his first week. Is it evil to round up convicted rapists and murderers and to send them back to their country? I don't think that's evil. I think it's evil to keep them on American streets where they have access to hurt American citizens.
Well, so we find out that Joe Biden extended this status for Venezuelan migrants. And we are here in the state of Michigan where we've got these gangs that are going into people's houses. And we're like, what are you talking? How can this even be? So Kristi Noem announces that they're ending the temporary protection status for the Venezuelan migrants. And people are like, oh my gosh, how can this happen? But I think you make such a good point. The average American who is living in these communities and suddenly they've been terrorized. I mean, you look at the Tren Aragua gang out of Colorado, and we remember when JD Vance said, well, I'm sorry, are you okay with one apartment building being terrorized like this? Because one always leads to more, but one is not even acceptable. Like that's the point. It is not okay for Americans to live in fear in this country, and especially not okay for Americans to live in fear of people who are not Americans.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And so with what Kristi Noem did in saying that, you know what, no, we are not allowing these people to stay here on this extension of 18 months. These 600,000 that are from Venezuela, let's look at where the origins of Tren de Aragua are. Oh, that's right. It's Venezuela. And a lot of these people they're rounding up, they are members of this gang. And this gang, they're very smart. I'll give them credit because unlike MS-13, another gang, which usually is identified by facial tattoos, Tren de Aragua knows that American law enforcement is after them, and they don't have recognizable tattoos a lot of times. They're hiding in plain sight. They're hiding in these apartment buildings surrounded by families, many of whom these children, as you mentioned, were trafficked, but they're pretending like they're family men. They're pretending like they're in this community when in reality, they're terrorizing this community by day and by night. So yeah, Kristi Noem saw that and thought, no, I don't think so. We're not letting all of these people just hang out.
I mean, it's interesting as we watch these folks who have gone through these confirmations taking office, they're still under attack. So Kristi Noem went to New York City. And I honestly, I love Kristi. I think she's amazing. She goes out there and she is wearing the gear. This is the Secretary of Homeland Security. She goes out there on the streets for the raid. And I'm telling you, I saw people just berating her like, oh, this is such a clown move. And I'm like, no, this is America. We're back. I see that stuff and I'm like, yes, thank you for getting involved. Thank you for putting yourself on the line. Thank you for being so bold as to go out there, put your face on every social media channel you can and say the worst of the worst are getting arrested and they're out of here.
And you know, what a change from the previous administration. Yeah. The previous administration was a bunch of suits, right? I mean, you rarely saw them. Whenever you saw Alejandro Mayorkas, he was in a suit behind a desk. You know, you didn't see a lot from him at all. And then you look at what Donald Trump did, you know, in his first weekend in office and deciding to go to North Carolina to visit the people who are still struggling from the effects of Hurricane Helene. And he goes then to California to meet with those people there, with his wife, Melania, as well, and to talk with people whose homes have been completely destroyed. He's boots on the ground. He's empathizer in chief. He's talking to the everyday American. And now we're seeing that from his cabinet, right? Kristi Noem, she had been official secretary for what, a day? And what is her first act of business? She's like, I'm going to go on the ground. Show me what's going on. Show me what you're doing. I want to see the people you're arresting. I was told she started at 2 a.m. that day. She's like, if you're starting at 2, I'm starting at 2.
And this is unlike any, to me, this is the part where this breaks protocol with the past administrations or breaks tradition with past administrations, because I think government has always been trying to hide what they're doing from the people. They have not been willing to share. And that's kind of the history of the deep state and the bureaucracy and the dark circles that follow around in Washington, D.C. You don't let the people actually know what you're doing. And certainly for the last 4 years, we've seen nobody. And I think part of it was because they didn't want anybody to know what the Biden administration was doing. And I think another big part of it was that Biden was not running the operation. So you never saw the president. And because you didn't really have a leader, what were the other people going to do? They couldn't step out and say anything because they didn't have anybody they were reporting to. I mean, it has been a complete 180 from what we saw for the last 4 years. And you bring up a great point about North Carolina, because that's something when we should have seen Joe Biden there. We Absolutely. Should have seen Joe Biden helping those people. I mean, even we had the hurricane hit there. We had the hurricane hit Florida. We had the fire in Hawaii. We had the fires in California. I mean, even East Palestine, Donald Trump went there and Joe Biden never showed up. I mean, this is such a shocking difference. And I think that has been what a lot of these far leftists are all up in a tizzy about, and they've got their feathers all fluffed because they're so freaked out about the fact that they're suddenly seeing somebody do something and they don't know how to handle it. And let me tell you, folks, it's a good thing.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You talk about all the times that Joe Biden was absent. I mean, we know he took more vacations and time off in the White House than any other president. I think it's more than 400 days off. That must be an amazing vacation policy. So he was always at the beach, right? So then you think, okay, well, if he's not here actively in charge, who is? Maybe the vice president, right? Well, then you look, he gave her one job, right? Border czar. She went to the border one time. How are you going to run effectively a border and control what's happening if you go there one time? So we saw zero leadership. We saw zero command. And again, you make such a good point as to who was really running things. It's scary when we think about that question and the answer to it, because is it low-level aides? Are they people that we obviously didn't vote for? People voted for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, right? So they expected them to be running the show. But let's be real. I don't think they were running the show at all. It was the people who weren't voted in, who were somewhat appointed, who we never saw behind the scenes making huge decisions for this country. And I think finally, in the few months before November 5th, people really started to open their eyes and say, okay, this guy's really been at the beach a lot lately. Maybe we do need someone else who's actually going to do the job. And again, Kamala Harris, she wasn't it because she didn't prove that she could do the job that she was given as border czar, even though if you ask her, that's never been her time.
Well, you make a great point, because this goes straight back to the Selena Gomez stuff about how did she not know that we were already deporting people? How did she not know that we had to keep the country safe? Because none of us were surprised debate night. Not a single person on the right, not a single person in conservative media was surprised. We were all like, oh yeah, well, yeah, that was going to happen. And the left, I mean, the radical media, the mainstream media, they're like, oh my gosh, it's over. Like this, he can never run again. And I'm like, how many of you though really didn't know? Because this was a master cover up, or you are responsible for lying to the American people. And I know some of those people met with him personally. I know they knew what was going on. I mean, even the interviews that they had, they knew what was going on. And you said, who was making the decisions at the White House? Remember when they all went out and protested on the White House lawn? The people that worked for the president said, we don't like your policy. And they went out and protested. That's how discombobulated that administration was.
It was so wild. And you're right. The left was so shocked on debate night. They could not believe what they witnessed, what they saw. I heard many commentators from places like MSNBC and CNN saying, I feel like we're owed an apology. I feel like we thought he was fine. But then, the same ones that said that, like Morning Joe's Joe Scarborough, was the same guy back in April, of 2024 saying, I have met with him. He is sharp as a tack.
Right.
He is at the top of his game. No, he's not. He's not at the top of his game. He's in his 80s. He's not at the top of his game. And that's okay to say. We don't expect anybody that's been serving for 50 years to be at the top of his game in the 50th year, right? We don't expect that. So all of it was lies. But again, if you turn on your TV every day to CNN or MSNBC and you read certain publications every day, and that's the only view you're seeing, you're believing it. And then you watch debate night, and then they quickly realize, oh, I've been lied to. Okay.
And then you have the contrast of one guy dodging bullets and the other guy tripping over a mountain of sand.
Yes.
I mean, you can't even make it up. It's like, and then Jill kind of, you could see the divide at a certain point when Jill gave up on him. She's like, okay, now you're useless. We've gotten what we needed out of you as a family. We did all of our racketeering. Clearly these things are done. And she just walks away from him on the beach. I will never forget those images where it's like, oh, I thought it was this great love story, but Jill's done. She's leaving him.
She's leaving. She's done propping him up. And she did it for so long. We have to blame her in this too.
Yeah.
I mean, she loved the power. She loved the position. She was the one encouraging him from day one. You have to run for a second term. You have to do this. You're fine. Get out there. You're fine. You are propping him up and you are helping him walk on sand. This is not a good thing. The leader.
And then there came a certain point when you could see she was like, if he breaks an ankle, it's his problem, and that's not love. I mean, if you
problem, get on out there. And you know what I love? Speaking of love, I love seeing Melania and Donald Trump together on these missions. I'm going to North Carolina, going to California. Barron's grown up now, right? So in his first administration,
Yeah.
Barron
Oh,
was
that's a
still
good point.
kid.
Yeah.
You know, he was still a little kid, and Melania always made it, you know, her point to say, I'm a mother first, obviously, right? So she was always needed there at home as she was raising Barron, because obviously Donald Trump was running a country. So now, you know, he's grown up, he's 18, he's in college, right, at NYU. So now it's like she does have the time, and we're seeing her alongside him. And, you know, she wasn't just stiffly there shaking hands, right, with those firemen. She was giving hugs to people in North Carolina. She was giving hugs to people
And speaking in her native tongue. And I was like, Melania 2.0, like I want to be Melania 2.0. This is a totally
she great doing it.
I know.
I just want her entire wardrobe. Thank you.
Yes. That's what I watch, and I'm like, you know, it's always like, how do you dress like so and so? I'm like, why is she not getting more attention? Because she's stunning. She is walking through a flood zone, and it's like a total disaster area. And I'm like, you look like you just walked out of a magazine. But she has this, it's a different presence. You can tell it is the presence of a person who is not going to let anybody mess with her this time. And I love it. It just is so inspiring. You have Donald Trump, who is so inspiring for men and boys to look at this and say, you know what, it's meaningful when you walk in and you say, I've got the power of the United States behind me, because it's not Donald Trump that is powerful on his own. It is the fact that we are the United States of America. We have power, and he knows how to use that power. If you don't know how to use the power of the United States, then there's no power whatsoever. That has changed. But for women to see her stand out there and say, I love you, I'm going to take care of you, we are a team, but we are not going to let anybody mess with us. It's like amazing. I love it.
You know what? That portrait says it all. Right?
I know.
That
totally
White House portrait of her, that's an ultimate boss babe. I'm in charge. I love how you said Melania 2.0, you know, and I see it in her eyes. It's that, you know, all you people that raided my home and went through my lingerie drawer. Okay. Look who's back in the White House. I loved that picture of her. It showed so much in that one photo. And and
it started right after they left office, because you had the nasty woman who wrote that book about her. And you know, when you're in this world, when you're in the media and the politics world, there is always someone that you're questioning if they're stabbing you in the back. You know, you have to be so careful. And that is the beauty of him having this term in between. He wiped all of those people out. Like, they're out of his life. Now he's going in with such a motley crew of amazing people. I mean, you've got Kristi Noem, and you've got RFK, and you've got Pete Hegseth, and everybody's like, what is this? Well, this is how I imagine it was like when people were like, you know what, these redcoats, they're no good. That's what I
love about these cabinet picks. They're all real people, right?
Yes.
And people who he trusts. Right. And it's not the typical business suit that we've expected to be in power this entire time. These are real people he's had real conversations with. And he knows that, you know what, they might not come from the proper background that you would expect someone to come from if they have this job or that job. But he's like, you know what, they're the person for the job, because they're going to get the job done and they can be trusted. And I think that's so important. And that's what we're seeing with these confirmations, are that, wow, these people, these are the best of the best.
Oh, I'm so sick of hearing they don't have the proper background. You can't get the Pentagon to pass an audit. The pharmaceutical companies have way too much power. They've got lobbyists that own congressmen and senators. Like, give me a break. The way it was going was not the right way. This is the right way. I mean, we'll see. But so far, I'm liking what I see.
Liking what I see too. And you know what? These executive orders are stellar. I love that instantly on day one, right? He went right to the White House. He sat there at the desk, and that's what so many people voted for. And that's what so many people are now seeing. And I think it was AP that just did a recent poll, and it showed in the last 2 weeks, 83% of Americans now support deportations of anyone who has committed a crime in this country. 83%. But all the polls that we were seeing, right, during the election season last year, it was, oh, no one supports this. This is very bad. Everyone's
exactly. The propaganda media. Well, I think the propaganda media is dead. And so I tell people, go watch Newsmax. You're going to get the true story. And this is Sharla McBride. Make sure you tune in to her show every morning. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. Thanks for coming on.
So fun. Anytime.
It was so much fun. And thank you all for joining us on the Tudor Dixon Podcast. As always, for this episode or others, go to TudorDixonPodcast.com, the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and join us next time. Have a blessed day.